Good morning, students. Welcome to the IGCSE online sessions. I'm Mr. Charles. This is the second lesson of the fifth week. Please go to your workbook, page 52. Another sort of life, a hobo in the US. Let's read together. Hobo is the name given to a group of people, mostly men, who spend their days traveling across the USA, hitching free rides on freight trains. One of these men, Jack Kotwinski, turned his back on ordinary life, getting and spending, and chose to live the life of a hobo. He was known to everyone as Hippie John. Unlike many others who have chosen to drop out of consumer society, once he had discovered the freedom of the road, he never turned to mainstream American life. When Hippie John was young and fit, he would run alongside slow moving trains, grab onto a ladder at the side of a boxcar, then swing himself up to safety. Gradually, age caught up with him. Being slower and less agile, he began boarding trays in rail yards between journeys. Sometimes he was even helped by friendly security guards, who knew Hippie John meant no harm. For a period of 20 years, he traveled the tracks that crossed the United States from ocean to ocean. He kept few possessions with him, only food and maps. His favorite routes, he said, were in the northern states, where he would lie under the stars in open boxcars on warm nights, while his train climbed mountain passes so narrow he could reach out and touch the rocks either side. But Hippie John's life was lonely. Sometimes to relieve this loneliness, he would take trips with other hobos. These men shared food and drink. Occasionally, they told each other where they had been, but other than that, they were united only by a shared sense of freedom. These hobos developed a special mutual respect born out of their love of being away from it all. It was never a perfect life, but Hippie John wanted no other. There are still many young and not so young men traveling the tracks across the USA. They are continuing a tradition dating back to the 19th century when the British poet Wordsworth lamented how modern man was becoming disconnected from the natural world. This was a hard time in North America when southern farmers returning from the Civil War found their homes and towns in ruins. Homeless, with only the clothes on their backs, they took the only jobs available, building the first railroad tracks. As they had once been farmers, they were called the Ho Boys and then hobos. Many of them never settled again, but instead spent their lives traveling the rail tracks they had built. Questions A to F. As always, you may pause the video now, try to solve them. They should take you about 20 to 25 minutes, and then come back. Or you may pause the video for every question and we can solve them together. Question A. Explain where the word hobo comes from. It used to be ho boys, means farm workers, and then by time came to be hobos. B. Explain what you understand by the phrase mainstream American life. This is partially opinionated, but more or less the mainstream American life consists of what society regards as being basic. For example, back in the days, if you had only a horse, let's say, that belongs to you, this used to be great. And then if you owned only a house, this used to be great. Or if you owned just a little bit of money. Now, the norms of society, the basic, what society considers to be basic now, is that you should have a house, you should have a car, you should have a stable job, and you should be paying taxes, at least in the USA. And this basic status brings people down a lot. This exhausts a large number of citizens into being on the verge or becoming hobos. So, because it is too exhausting, people choose to be hobos. C. Using your own words, briefly describe the hobo lifestyle. Whatever you say, in whatever wording you want, you should know that it includes trains. It includes no employment, no fixed home, there's no stable home for them. They do feel a sense of freedom, occasionally they feel lonely, and they share experiences with other hobos and food. D. Describe how Jack Kotwinski boarded trains when he was young and in his more mature life. When he was young, he would run alongside moving trains, and when he got older, he got into the boxcars in rail yards. E. Reread the sentence, they are continuing a tradition, becoming disconnected from the natural world. Discuss what this suggests about how hobos choose to spend their lives traveling the tracks. So, what does it mean for hobos to stop the living of the city life and move to a disconnected from that city life and more connected to the natural world? What does this tradition mean to be more connected to the traditional, or sorry, to the natural world? The hobo life dates back to early days of rail, where they initially wanted to connect to nature and steer away from materialism. So for them, life was becoming more and more about material or materialistic life. That is what how many things you own and how many buildings are around you. Very much close to our life nowadays. And they were sick and tired of this. They wanted to go back to nature. And this was supposed to be done through traveling the whole time. The freedom of from the city. Question F, reread paragraphs 2 and 3. Choose three phrases used by the writer to suggest the pleasures Hippie John found in this hobo life and explain how they express this pleasure. This question is to be solved by the skew technique. And in case you don't remember what that was, this is how to approach almost all questions in the comprehension section of IGCSE exam. That is, you state your purpose, state what you want, and then quote how or what you find in relation to what you want. Explain this quotation, paraphrase this quotation, and then state the effect of this quotation on the overall text, on the overall tone, on the overall purpose of the writer for this specific feature, let's say. For us, they already stated what they want. They wanted the pleasures or how hippie John found the hobo life to be pleasurable and how is this expressed. So they want from us the quotation and the effect, since they already explained to us and what they want, and they stated what they wanted. When he says a phrase that is run alongside moving trains, the explanation, it's a piece of cake. This basically to run next to a train, that's all. This phrase does not contain sophisticated words, difficult vocabulary for us to explain. It literally as easy as it means to run alongside trains. Now, what's the effect? What's the meaning between the lines as we talked about this last week? What's the hidden meaning beside the surface meaning of just running? The action of running next to moving objects as a train or a slow moving train or a car for a child is an exciting activity. This is fun. I'm sure most of you have done it. I've done it myself. For you to try to outrun a car or to just try to keep up with the speed of a moving car. This made you feel strong, right? Now, this is a fun activity, exciting activity. The next phrase is that he would travel from ocean to ocean. Traveling in general is an exciting activity for children and adults alike. And John, hippie John, used to do it when, or he is still doing it, while he's an adult. He would travel from ocean to ocean. This implies excitement. He would lie under the stars because the train or the box cars that he would used to be on the train, they were so close moving in the mountains, he could almost touch the rocks. And if he would look up, he would see the stars. This is a soothing feeling for adults. Right now, when you are feeling, let's say, tired, confused, much frustrated, you go lie in the open under the stars, a starry night. And this gives a feeling of peace, tranquility, as for an adult. So, this is us determining the quotation, this cue technique, determining the quotation, and then explaining its effect. Page 54, use of English defining and non-defining relative clauses. After that you have watched the video attached in the pacing chart, just a quick reminder that relative clauses are spotted by the existence of the initial relative pronoun. That is who, whom, whose, that, and which. These relative pronouns define or non-define a clause that comes after them, depending on whether the information is essential or not essential, whether we have many things to spot one of them, hence using defining relative clause, or we have just one thing and we don't need extra, or we don't need the information to be essential after it, so we call it extra information, non-defining. And this is marked by the existence of commas, the non-defining relative clause. Go to question 1, please, which is delete the defining relative clauses from the following two sentences. A, the hotel that we stayed in, our school trip to London, was very big. This is a defining relative clause because there are many hotels and we need to define which hotel we're talking about. That's why we should keep it. But if we delete it as the question demands, then the sentence becomes the hotel was very big. Which hotel, which city are you talking about? This is not defined at all. That's why it's a mistake. Or at least it does not express the idea. The grammar is still fine. Subject, verb, and complement. But the idea is not clear what you want to say. B, the guide who showed us around the Tower of London was very funny. Again, we have many guides, and this guide in particular, who showed us around the Tower of London, was a hoot, was a funny guy. Delete the relative defining relative clause, and you would have the guide who was very funny. Question 2, delete the non-defining relative clauses from these sentences. A, the book we're studying this term, look at the existence of commas, which I have read before, is called Lord of the Flies. So we have one book we are studying this term. So the existence of the information after it is extra, is non-defining. That's why if we erase it or delete it, it would become the book we're studying this term is called Lord of the Flies. B, Lord of the Flies tells the story of a group of boys who crash land on an island, which is situated somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, and how they survive without adults. Can you sense while we are reading that the information between the commas is extra, is non-defining, and this is the one that we are able to delete. Lord of the Flies tells the story of a group of boys who crash land on an island and how they survive without adults. This tells us, since we kept the who, first of all because there are no commas, second of all because there are many groups of boys, and this group in particular crash land on an island. See, George Orwell, who lived in what used to be called Burma when he was young, is famous for writing Animal Farm and 1984. Both great stories. So, Erase the non-defining relative clause, you would have George Orwell is a famous writer for writing Animal Farm in 1984. Animal Farm, whose real hero, D, is a cart horse called Boxer, is an allegory, a literary device of the Russian Revolution. Erase the non-defining relative clause. Animal Farm is an allegory of the Russian Revolution. The final one, the character of Boxer, who is very hardworking, represents Russian laborers. The character of Boxer represents Russian laborers. Question 3. Decide whether each of the following sentences contains a defining or non-defining relative clause. The first one has been done. So Marianne, who always comes top in tests, is the only girl I know who plays a trumpet. Non-defining relative clause, the existence of commas, and we have one Marianne. B. Paula can't go on the trip because her twin brother Joey, whose name is really Joshua, we really don't care about what's his real name. This is extra information. I'm sure Paula cares what's his real name, but we can understand the information about Joey without really. This is in no relation to his broken leg, his real name. So this is a non-defining as well. C. Money that had been stolen from our school safe was found in a classroom. So we need the that here, which marks the defining relative clause, because we're not talking about any money. We're talking about the money that had been stolen from our school safe that was found in a classroom. That's why it's defining essential information. Jack's mother, who can play the violin, makes delicious cakes for our school tuck shop. Jack's mother makes delicious cakes. This piece of information is not related to her playing the violin, to her ability to play the violin. That's why this is unessential information and hence non defining. Jack's mother's violin, which she will be playing at our school charity concert, is extremely valuable. Again, non defining. The next question, question 4, is opinionated. Write a short paragraph of more than 2 sentences about a book you have recently read. Vary your sentences so they contain defining and non-defining relative clauses. Whatever book you choose, I chose one of my favorite books, The Kite Runner by Khalid Husseini. And whatever you decide to write, just make sure you include defining and non-defining relative clause. So The Kite Runner is a book by Khalid Husseini. It tells the story of Amir, who is a young boy from Afghanistan's aristocratic family. This is an undefining relative clause. And his closest friend, Hassan, whose father is the main servant in Amir's family. Again, undefining relative clause marked by the relative pronoun whose. This story, which is set during the fall of the monarchy in Afghanistan, the Soviet intervention, and the rise of Taliban, tackles the ideas of father-son relationships and its effects, which can be momentary and permanent, small and massive. We need to define which effects are we talking about. Effects in general? No. We need the effects that are momentary and permanent, small and massive. That's why this is a defining relative clause marked by the relative pronoun which. On the side, I encourage you, I highly recommend this book. It is of an amazing story. We're done for today. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe and keep up the good work.